growing more plants in less space, getting bigger harvests, saving money. There are many reasons to consider growing vertically. Hi, I'm Gardener Scott, and I discuss everything gardening so that you can become a better gardener. I'm going to discuss those and many more reasons why you should consider growing vertically. Growing vertically is suitable for just about every gardener. It all depends on what plants you're growing and how you want to grow them. I grow vertically in my raised beds, I grow vertically in my grow bags, I grow vertically in my in-ground beds because of what I'm trying to get from my plants, especially the harvest. And here's the general concept. When we typically grow in the traditional method, our plants just grow wherever we place them. It's two-dimensional. The vining plants grow across the ground. But if you start thinking about your garden as a three-dimensional space and think about the height you have, now those plants that were spreading out two-dimensionally can grow vertically. And you can take advantage of that three-dimensional garden that's all around you. To garden vertically, you will need some type of support for your plants as they grow upward. But it doesn't need to be anything fancy. You could use the side of your house, you could use a fence, you could use a deck, you could use a simple trellis made out of tree branches like I have here. The whole idea is just to give the plants support as they're growing up, so that they're not flopping all over the ground. One of the greatest benefits to vertical gardening is that you can do it anywhere. If you have very limited space, you may think you're limited in what you can grow, but don't think that way. By thinking up, you can actually grow a lot of plants that maybe you wouldn't otherwise be able to do. If you live in an apartment and you have a deck or a small patio, you may think you can't grow tomatoes because you're used to the idea that they're sprawling everywhere. But by setting up a simple trellis system and using grow bags or pots or some other type of container, you can grow tomatoes. All the vining plants you can grow because they're going up and not out. So don't think that limited space will restrict what you can grow. Think vertically and grow what you want. This greenstock vertical growing system is a great option if you want to grow a lot of different plants but you have limited space. And I have a video where I show how to set this up and how I use it, and I'll put a link to it at the end of this video. But the concept is you grow a whole bunch of plants in a very small footprint. Instead of limiting yourself to just one container that you're growing vertically in, well, now you've got multiple containers to handle a whole bunch of plants. And if you think vertically, where you're growing more plants in a smaller space, you might come across something like this. It's a little strawberry pot with multiple openings, and in a space that's about this big, I'm growing 10 strawberry plants. That's a lot more than I'm growing in my raised bed of strawberries. And by setting up this small hoop to act as a trellis in this bed, I'm growing way more than I could grow without this vertical idea. I have a couple dozen cucumber plants growing vertically on that end. And I've got about a dozen yellow squash plants growing in this end. And even squash plants can be trained vertically. By growing up and not out, I'm basically tripling, if not quadrupling, the amount of plants and the amount of fruit that I'll get in this bed. And I've also got a couple melon plants squeezed in here that will be able to take advantage of this trellis as well. You can greatly reduce the chance of disease in your plants by growing vertically as well, especially in plants like tomatoes. When they sprawl across the ground, the leaves are always wet, they're exposed to the soil, they are ripe for getting diseases. But when you grow up, You can prune back the leaves. You can increase the airflow, the air circulation through the plants, which will greatly reduce the chance of some of those diseases. The plants end up being cleaner, they end up being healthier, and the disease often becomes an issue that maybe you don't even have to worry about anymore. When you grow vertically, you're not going to lose as much fruit as you might otherwise when you grow on the ground. Those of us that have been doing it for a while know that when the plants spread out, and at the end of the season when we clean up the garden, there's always cucumbers and melons and squashes that were hiding underneath the leaves that we never saw. But by getting the squash and the beans and the tomatoes off the ground, then we can see everything. There's no more hidden fruit, which greatly increases the amount of fruit that you're harvesting. And by having a tall trellis, you can increase your harvest even more because you can pack more plants into this space and then you grow them up as tall as you want. Growing them in small cages or in a small bed limits how much you can grow. But by growing up, the sky is almost literally the limit. All of these tomato plants growing on this trellis will be at least 10 feet long, which gives me the potential for a lot of tomatoes. And also, a vertical system like this is easier for me and other old gardeners because it improves accessibility. Instead of having to bend over and look under leaves and try to find our fruit, we can stand up. It's right here. It's right in front of us at our fingertips. No bending involved. So if you got a bad back, if you've got some accessibility issues, that alone may be reason to start thinking about doing vertical gardening. Growing vertically can also make your watering much more efficient. Because you can see each individual plant, you know exactly where the roots are. So when it comes time to water, you get the water right where it's needed, right at the roots of a plant. With a plant that's sprawling and all you see are the leaves, well, you don't necessarily know where the main plant is. So you water the leaves, you water a lot of ground around the plant where there are no roots, and you're wasting water. Grow vertically, and you can set up a drip irrigation system, you can hand water, you can use soaker hoses, but you can get to the plant, to the roots, so that you're watering where the water needs to be and not wasting it. And the same holds true for fertilizer. If you use fertilizer, you should be putting it so the roots can absorb the nutrients. It doesn't do any good to just spray a bunch of fertilizer into ground that the roots will never reach. And that often happens with big leafy plants that are growing in a bed. The foliar feeding really doesn't do as much good as getting the nutrients to the roots. Well, when I grow up, I can see where the plant is, and if I need to fertilize, I can put it right where I need it and not waste it, saving money in the process. Now, I don't grow everything vertically, though I could. I like the look of a sprawling pumpkin patch. So in my hugelkultur bed, I'm letting the pumpkins go wild because I really enjoy when my grandkids come over and they can reach down and pick a nice big round pumpkin. But every time I bring a hose through here and every time I walk through here, I run the risk of stepping on the plants, breaking them, causing damage. If I were to grow these pumpkins and all of the other vining plants vertically, well, I lessen that problem. I'm not stepping on the bed. I'm not causing potential damage in everyday gardening tasks. If you're like me, where you tend to just walk and step on plants when you're not thinking about it, well, get the plants off the ground so that problem doesn't happen anymore. And don't think that vertical gardening is going to cost a lot. It can be very cost effective. Sure, I've got some fancy trellises, but I also have this one made out of tree branches, which didn't cost me anything. And you might be familiar with the Three Sisters system of gardening, where you have corn and beans and squash all growing in the same bed. Well, the corn acts as a trellis to get the beans growing vertically so that the squash doesn't smother it. That's a classic example of growing vertically. If you have a fence, all you need is just to put a nail or a screw and put some twine on it, and now you've got a trellis that really didn't cost you anything. The seeds that you're buying and often wasting because the package has more seeds than we typically need, well, now you can put more plants in a given space and you're not wasting the seeds. So start looking at that aspect of vertical gardening. It's easy, it can save you money, and it really can be an opportunity to reuse some of the things that you already have in your garden. So there are many benefits to vertical gardening. If you're not already doing it, then I think you might be sold, and I bet you'll start doing it pretty soon. It will definitely make you a better gardener as you move into a new realm of gardening. And also, to help you become a better gardener, well, consider watching one of these videos. I'm Gardener Scott. Enjoy gardening.